any sermon, so I shall begin this sermon about time with Ecclesiastes 3, which I read, where the word time occurs many times. What does the word time mean? The Oxford English Dictionary is a good place to start. It says that in 1398, time was a variant spelling of time. Do I need to spell it out for you? T-I-M-E was a variant spelling of T-H-Y-M-E. This makes interpreting Ecclesiastes 3:1 easy. To everything, there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. This clearly means that season means seasoning, and time is used as a generic seasoning. There is a spice for every aspect of life. I could pursue this line of thought, but the further I went, the more contrived the arguments would be. Rather, I should start at the beginning. Time has the same root as tide, with the original meaning unclear, perhaps division as the tides divide the day. But over the years, time, spelled T-I-M-E, has acquired many meanings with subtle or less subtle differences. Testing all of them to see which fits Ecclesiastes best would be a major undertaking. So I went to the web to find out what time means in Ecclesiastes. The first exegesis I found said that Ecclesiastes 3 means that the time of everything is determined by God, so it is inappropriate and futile to try to understand why. Further, the juxtapositions, born, die, kill, heal, sow, reap, sow, rend, war, peace, are given because all things recur. Hence, we should not despair because of the present state. War is followed by peace. Jesus even restored life to the dead. This optimism for the future is, of course, a foundation of the Bible. The story is told of the person who was always cheerful despite great adversity. When asked why, he said he read the Bible, which always says it came to pass, never it came to stay. But I cannot accept that we should not try to understand when these times will occur. We may not need to or be able to obtain foreknowledge of when birth and death will occur. I shall not discuss Planned Parenthood here, but we have greatly benefited from understanding when to plant and when to harvest based on the calendar rather than the day's temperature. Hence, perhaps it is just a statement that there are proper times for these things so that we should try to do them at the proper time. But this too does not make sense. Psalm 90:10 says, the days of our years are 80 years and 10. And if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. This says the time to die is at age 70. You're getting to the rough part now. Those who die earlier or later are not pleasing to God. For sowing and reaping, it was indeed important to understand how to calculate the calendar to know the proper time. But with our current understanding, we have built greenhouses producing fresh tomatoes all year, with sowing and reaping throughout the year. Exodus 20:13 says, you shall not murder. Hence, it is not clear that there is ever a time to kill. I shall not discuss the vengeful Hebrew God versus the loving Christian God. Some of us would say it is always time to dance. Dance is used in the sense of praise in the Bible. I did not seek other exegeses on the web, fearing I would encounter similar problems. Rather, I returned to asking myself, If Ecclesiastes 3 refers to neither a time to be accepted without understanding, nor a time which we must strive to learn, can there be another sense? I suggest that time is used in the sense of circumstance, and we should consider whether our actions are appropriate under the given circumstances. When I looked for synonyms of time on the web, I only found one website which included circumstance, but I will take any support I can find, no matter how meager. An alternative explanation with great theological implications is that the word time can have different meanings, even in the same chapter and verse. Augustine's argument that the use of the same Greek word in Matthew 25:46 to describe everlasting punishment and eternal life means that the former cannot be finite and the latter infinite. Hence, we can challenge his argument against universalism if we allow time to have different meanings in Ecclesiastes 3. It is of anecdotal interest that although the original Greek uses only aionion, the King James translation uses two different words, everlasting and eternal. Since Carolyn was nice enough to play turn, 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 I will mention that the final lyric, I swear it's not too late, suggests we consider the consequences of our actions and stop the cycling of juxtapositions mentioned. In particular, omit killing, hate, war. Having paid due diligence to the Bible, I would like to next consider the writings of the mathematician Charles Dodson, who is known by his pen name Lewis Carroll. When I was young, our minister always ran the service, including the sermon, except for a couple of weeks a year when he could not. On those occasions, either Mr. Brew or my father did the service. When my father did the service, he always included the following passage from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. I do not remember how he related it to his sermon, but I shall relate it to my sermon. And let's omit that. To save some time, I shall omit the paragraphs that describe Alice and the Queen running until Alice was exhausted and pick up the passage with, the Queen propped her up against a tree and said kindly, "You may rest a little now." Alice looked round her in great surprise. "Why, I do believe we've been under this tree the whole time. Everything's just as it was." "Of course it is," said the Queen. "What would you have it?" "Well, in our country," said Alice, still panting a little, "you generally get to somewhere else if you ran very fast for a long time, as we've been doing." "A slow sort of country," said the Queen. "Now here, you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. If you want to get somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast as that." "I'd rather not try, please," said Alice. "I'm quite content to stay here." I could interpret this passage as foretelling the treadmill, which provides the benefit of letting us run without ever leaving the security of our home. However, relevant to this sermon on time, it conveys the message that we must never stop or slack the pursuit of our goal. When I was in junior high, we saw a movie with the lyric, "Run, run, run to get your bread, run, 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 or you'll be dead." I actually found that movie on the web when I searched for it. I can tell you about that later. When I graduated from Stanford, textbooks in molecular biology and computer science were out of date by the time they were published. At Stanford, I was at the cutting edge of knowledge, 5 years ahead of general knowledge. 10 years later, after leaving Stanford, I was 5 years behind general knowledge. Indeed, Unlike the Queen's permission for Alice to rest a little, there is no time for rest. If you rest, you fall behind. In case you would like something closer to religion than Through the Looking Glass as a foundation for this sermon or argument, I will cite some lyrics from the spiritual Keep to the Middle of the Road. The chorus is, so children keep in the middle of the road, children keep in the middle of the road. Don't you look to the right, don't you look to the left, just keep in the middle of the road. And the verses contain the lines, going to travel along before it gets too late, for it ain't no use for to sit down and wait, and I ain't got time for to stop and talk. I shall conclude this section with some quotes which reflect the universality of the belief in the need to not waste time. The common man is not concerned about the passage of time. The man of talent is driven by it. Schopenhauer. This is the most valuable thing a man can, time is the most valuable thing a man can spend. Theophrastus. Every second is of infinite value. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Time is really the only capital that any human being has, and the only thing he can't afford to lose. Thomas Edison. It's really clear that the most precious resource we all have is time. Steve Jobs. And finally, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. Oh, sorry. Get to the end. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Rudyard Kipling. Our closing hymn questions what it means to waste time. I leave it to you to reconcile its lyrics with what I have just said. I would like to conclude with considering time in the context of physics. First, I would like to recall the three laws of thermodynamics. Energy is conserved. Every activity generates entropy, which you can think of as randomness. And entropy is only zero at absolute zero. These are often stated as you can't win, you can't break even, and you can't get out of the game. Doctor Who summarized these, or the second law in particular, as the more you put things together, the more they come apart. This is why I presented the demonstration for all ages. You cannot obtain the contents of an egg without breaking the shell, but that does not mean you must totally destroy the shell. Time is often considered the fourth dimension, but time has a significant difference from the three spatial dimensions. You can move right or left, up or down, forward or back in spatial directions, but you cannot move backward in time. The reason for this is the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy increases with the passage of time. You cannot put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Yet time is necessary for understanding the spatial dimensions. Accurate timekeeping was necessary for early navigation. Latitude was easily calculated from the stars and sun, but one needed to know what time it was in order to calculate longitude. GPS systems, which we rely on for going across town, across the country, or across the world, are dependent on highly accurate timekeeping. In the spirit of the adage that education or knowledge is a series of lies converging on the truth, I should mention that some people believe that quantum entanglement, which enables us to transmit information faster than the speed of light, may enable us to reverse time. Although a good sermon as a piece of art is something in which one finds their own meaning. I can offer possible messages from the three portions of this talk. The discussion of Ecclesiastes 3 is a reminder that the Bible is poetry and should be comprehended as a whole. If you try to parse it too much, you cannot know its meaning. Perhaps it manifests a variation of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. You cannot know the meaning of time unless you know its context. The discussion of Alice's run is a reminder that no matter how fundamental something is, exceptions to any rule will always occur. As we adhere to a rule, we must cherish the exceptions. And if you don't think you heard that, that's because you're supposed to get that after reflecting on the final hymn. The discussion of physics has a message from how to save eggshells, but also that our understanding from science is always evolving and everything is interrelated.